Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today we are covering how to use Amazon reports to drive growth. My name is Heather Eastman. I am the Caspian Content Marketing Manager. And our speakers today, you'll notice that we have a slightly different lineup. In the emails that you received, it said Matt Brady was going to be one of our speakers. Unfortunately, he is out sick today. So we have Jeremy Rousseau has graciously offered to step in. He is our digital marketing manager. And then we also have Kenley Seefeld. She is our partner success manager. And Jeremy and Kenley, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourselves briefly and talk about your experience at Caspian and your background.
Perfect. Thanks, Heather. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. I'm the digital marketing manager here at Caspian. I've been with Caspian for about 5 years. All that time spent in the marketing department, wearing a few hats, working on paid advertising, listing content, and helping out with some of our software development as well. I'm currently the digital marketing manager overseeing our teams that manage all things listings within the catalogs for the brands that we manage, as well as a team that manages all of our Amazon advertising.
Awesome. And I am Kenley. I've been with Caspian for 4 years. Actually, today is my 4-year anniversary, so kind of exciting day to be here doing this. But have 6 total combined years of experience in account and project management in e-commerce. And as a current partner success manager on our agency side, I work closely with some of our enterprise brands to grow their revenue and brand awareness through a lot of the data-driven insights, goal setting, and tailored recommendations that we will be talking through today. And previously, I'd worked as an account manager on our retail side. So a lot of similar work, but just kind of a different way of looking at it. So very familiar with a lot of what we're talking through here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, Jeremy, thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute to help host this webinar. We're very excited. And just a couple of quick housekeeping items. You got a welcome message that said that you will receive a recording of this webinar at the end, or I'm sorry, sometime tomorrow. So we will make sure to send that recording out to you. Also, if you have questions, we do have a live Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So make sure you put those questions in the chat. We will ask Jeremy and Kenley those questions at the end if you have any. And then let's go ahead and just take a look at what we plan to cover in this webinar. So first, a little background about Caspian and our Amazon marketing experience. We were founded in 2008 as a third-party seller. We grew into a $1 billion-plus seller, and we now have in-house teams who are dedicated to helping our partners achieve similar results. Our mission is to accelerate brands' growth on top online leading marketplaces, and that's kind of the idea behind these webinars. Is we're here to educate, promote updates that are happening in the e-commerce retail space, and really just go over things you should know to help you find that success on Amazon. So today we're going to be talking about some of those back-end Amazon performance metrics, which metrics you should be tracking for growth in your business, how to spot areas of opportunity, and then using those metrics to improve, kind of talking through which levers to pull if you're seeing certain things, and basically how to use those back-end reports to really drive growth in your business. So without further ado, I will allow Jeremy and Kenley to take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. So this presentation, we're going to kind of split it up into 3 parts, as mentioned in the agenda. First part here is we're going to take a look at which metrics really determine growth of your brand on Amazon and other marketplaces, and how you should be looking at those metrics, and maybe most importantly, where you can find those metrics within the platform. So as we go through the presentation here, again, we're going to be talking about a lot of different metrics, and we're going to be looking at it primarily from the Amazon advertising lens, but then also from your total business lens as well. And so we've listed out here a few of some of the available metrics that we really use to track growth. Now, when we think about growth, typically we're thinking about orders, sales, units, kind of the obvious metrics that would point to, is my brand sales growing on Amazon? What we really want to do with this presentation here is dive one layer deeper and kind of look at these secondary or alternative metrics that maybe we're not tracking as closely as we should be, but really kind of how we can use those to get an idea of what's really happening with our brand's performance on Amazon. So some of the metrics we're going to dive into throughout this presentation on the advertising side, we're going to look at impressions, how many eyeballs are my ads getting in front of, impression share, so what percentage of the market is seeing your ad, what percentage of your ads are placing in which positions in the search on Amazon, clicks, how many relevant clicks are we driving to our listings. Again, revenue is going to be just sort of in the backdrop of this presentation. And then ACOS, so how efficiently are we advertising, and what does our ACOS tell us about what's actually happening with our brand on Amazon?
Yeah, and we'll also be looking at it kind of from a little bit of a zoomed out lens too, just from a business perspective. And that would include, of course, the business report, specifically looking at it by ASIN detailed sales and traffic. That report's going to give you a ton of information, including things like page views, sessions, unit volume, buy box, etc. So there's going to be a lot of important things to be looking at in that report that would kind of show you where else you should go to continue digging into things to find out what's doing really well, what's not. So just a couple of the call outs on those reports would be that the business reports in Amazon sometimes can look a little bit inflated because they show booked sales. That means they do not factor in returns, and currently it includes unshipped sales. So any order sitting in a customer's cart or that's ready to ship but hasn't been paid for yet, it will show up in that number. So always expect just a little bit of variable between that and what you'll actually see at the end of the month. But it's still a very great way to track throughout the month what's going on. But for the most accurate look at shipped sales, you want to look at your payments report, which I can touch on later. But a couple other key call outs that we should be tracking are page views, and that's the number of visits your store receives within a certain time period, or your listing receives within a certain time period. And each view is counted separately. So if a customer is coming to just 3 separate pages in your store, for instance, that would be 3 separate page views. But if they're coming to your listing, say 5 times, that's going to be 5 page views. So those are important to keep track of, and sessions are as well. And that's the total number of visitors to your page within a given time period, usually 24 hours. So we'll also get into why sessions are important a little bit later. And then another huge thing to be looking at is conversion rate. That's how many people are coming to your page and actually purchasing when they do that. We'll also go into how to find that later and how to calculate that. And then branded search volume is another thing to be looking for. And that's just kind of keeping an eye on brand awareness. You want to be thinking about if people are searching for your brand outside of seeing your ads. So you can do that by tracking the volume of branded searches to see if you're growing or shrinking in the Amazon landscape. And Jeremy will get a little bit further into that later of where to track those metrics.
Awesome, thank you, Kenley. So let's take a dive into some of these metrics, and we'll sort of talk about what they really mean and some things to look out for here. So you can have good metrics, or you can be trending positively in some areas, but there might still be red flags that you want to be aware of and take a deeper dive into. So the top 3 metrics we listed here again are probably the 3 that most brands are familiar with tracking. Looking at channel revenue or their total revenue, how they're trending year over year. Same thing with ad revenue, how is that trending? Is it flat year over year? Is it declining? And then again, ACOS, is ACOS rising, showing that we're getting less efficient with our advertising. But some of the ones we've listed below are ones that are typically pretty good indicators that there might be other problems, even if we're not doing poorly in the 3 metrics above. So they might be some different leading indicators that trouble could be on the way. So buy box percentage is one that we especially as a third-party seller, we take keen interest in. But as a brand selling yourself, or in any exclusive relationship with a brand, This is something that you should pay very close attention to. It can be a very troubling indicator that sales may be declining, and give you some insight into what might be going on with some of the other sellers alongside you in your channel. Page views declining as well. Looking at it from more of the organic side versus the advertising side, it's pretty easy with your ads to see if your impressions or clicks are going down. This can indicate that you're getting less eyeballs on your ads, less traffic to your listings. But tracking page views is really going to help you understand what's going on organically with your brand. If your total page views are going down, in conjunction what's going on with your advertising as well, that just might be an indicator that there is less organic interest for your brand for whatever reason. And so that's something we want to keep a close eye on so that we can make adjustments as needed. Unit session rate, or what can be considered conversion rate, is another thing to keep a close eye on. So this is, again, how many units we're selling per unique sessions we're getting to our listings. So as we're getting unique shoppers engaging with our brand, is our conversion rate, again, our organic conversion rate increasing or declining? So really important metric to keep an eye on as well, kind of flies under the radar, but really want to keep a close eye on if we are converting unique shoppers as they interact with our brand. And then again, fewer brand searches, as Kenley mentioned. If our brand is shrinking in volume on the Amazon landscape, that's definitely a red flag. So how can we promote our brand, not just our individual ASINs, to make sure that we're continuing to carve out significant market share against our competition? So those are some of the signs to keep an eye out for. You'll notice in the top right corner here, we throughout this presentation are including where we can find all these metrics that we talked through, because we know there's going to be a lot of them. So you'll see a list of where you can find all these, and we'll kind of make note of those on which ones are which and how you can track them. So again, we can use the sales dashboard under the business reports to track our total sales, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever the time frame of interest is. The campaign report in the advertising portal is a great way to look at our performance by ad type to see if we are growing in sales, if our ACOS is improving or declining, if our impressions are improving or declining. Sales and traffic would be the location under the business reports where you can look at page views and unit session percentage by ASIN to really get a good idea of what's going on at your product level. And then the last one here, the search query performance report, is a new beta report that is under the brand analytics section in Seller Central. That's what that image below here is, and it actually links to a new page where you can look at searches or queries by keyword for your brand. And so it's really insightful to show you, at a week over week interval, what search terms you are improving for as far as impressions, clicks, add to carts, etc. So we'll give a close-up view of that later on in the presentation, but it's a really cool new feature that's going to help track your keyword performance for your brand holistically.
Awesome, thanks, Jeremy. That was all super helpful information. Excited to keep checking out more of that beta program that they've got with those search analytics. So everyone go check those out if you can. All right, and this next section we'll be getting into is using the metrics that we've just talked about high level as it relates to boosting visibility, engagement, and conversions. So kind of getting into the meat and potatoes here. And Jeremy, I'll let you kick it off with visibility.
Perfect, thank you. So when we talk about visibility, we're as sellers on Amazon, we want to think about this in two ways. Visibility not only for the shoppers who are interacting with our brand and our products, but visibility for the algorithm. So making sure that we are thinking about our listings, thinking about our ads in a way that we are getting the best possible placements and putting ourselves in a position to rank highly on the search and get the best ad placements. So, there's a couple different things that we can do that we'll cover throughout this presentation here to talk about how we can improve both our listings and our advertising to address some of the metrics and kind of how things might be trending along the way. So some of the metrics that we want to look at as far as visibility goes, search ranking, again, using the reports that are available to us either in the brand analytics dashboard, the search analytics dashboard, which I alluded to in the previous slide, see which keywords we're ranking for, see where our ASINs are ranking over a given period of time to make sure that we are continually improving our placement in order to try and grow our channel sales. Again, visibility means getting eyeballs on our listing. So our impressions increasing, impression share, what percentage of impressions are we getting on keywords? That can all be found in the search term impression share report in the Amazon advertising portal. Again, sessions from a business perspective, how many unique shoppers are we getting to our listings over a given date range? And again, that's on the detail page and sales traffic report.
And Jeremy, it seems like there's many types of impressions, especially just getting eyeballs on pages and eyeballs on ads. Are all impressions kind of created equal?
Yeah, that's a great point, and certainly they're not. And we know that the top search result on the search on the SERP can garner up to 70% of conversions. So really, it's all about getting in those top 3 or 4 placements if you're running sponsored product ads. If you're winning the sponsored brand placement versus getting a secondary carousel placement at the bottom of the page. Placing on the first page versus placing your ad on a product detail page. There's huge and tremendous value in getting those high value placements as far as your ads go. Same thing with your organic, impressions. Getting on the first page versus on the third page is going to make, a huge difference. So it's not only about just tracking the number of impressions, but really seeing where those impressions are landing can give you really big insight into just how things are trending. So that's why we usually pair impressions with impression share, because impression share will really give you that true value of what your impressions are driving.
And how should brands look at impressions versus impression share? Like which one? I think most people seem to be tracking impressions, but relative to impression share, like how should we be talking about that with brands as they're evaluating the success of their ads or even just their goals, of which one they want to grow? Like which one should they focus on growing more?
Right. Yeah. And when it comes down to it, our focus is always to drive those top of search impressions. So, pulling those total per sessions, combining that with your percentage of top of search, that's really the figure that we want to take a look at, because we do know that it drives the bulk of the performance for sponsored products. And so, there's a few things that we can do to help increase that percentage. Optimizing our listing content to not only make our ads more relevant, but to also help them place higher organically. Making sure that we're targeting the right keywords. So again, you may be getting a lot of impressions on a keyword, but if those impressions are low value, then we don't really want to be spending a lot of our ad budget on that. Making our bids more competitive. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting outbid on a super relevant search term. So continuing to play around and experiment of kind of where that sweet spot is with your bids, where you're balancing out your return versus your high value impressions, or trying another means of targeting. If keyword targeting, is not working out, taking a look at targeting ASINs, targeting shoppers by category, can be effective at trying to garner more high value impressions than what we're currently receiving.
Awesome, that all makes sense.
Awesome. And then, as I mentioned before, this is the search query report that is in beta. Really great information that's presented on here, so we can see for a given brand just which search query we are ranking for, what the volume of those search terms are. Again, our brand share, so how much we're showing for, and what percentage we're showing for any given search query, what percentage of clicks we're getting for any search query, and I apologize, it's cut off on the right here, but even how many add to carts we're getting for any given search query. So again, just showing here, while impressions, we can see kind of what our impression share is on there. We also want to take a look and see what our click share and our add to cart share is. So we can really make decisions on which keywords actually are getting the higher conversion rate and are being the most profitable for our brands as we monitor this.
And in looking at this, is there anything else that you'd recommend brands look at for categories to make sure that they're placing in the right categories? Because for instance, I could just see if someone got recategorized and they kind of have an overlap, say they've got maybe pool gates or something, for instance, that does apply to kids and child safety, but it's more in the home category and tools and improvement than it is in baby, but there is some overlap. Is there a way to look at this report and filter it by category, or to take another report into account that might provide some larger context if it's not making sense with the given category that it's in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the most important report on that one would be the brand analytics within your Amazon advertising platform. And so again, that would allow you to look at your brand performance by category, particularly with your branded terms in general, and just see which subcategories or specific categories you are seeing traction in, or which ones you might be losing market share in. So yep, that's a great question. That one is a little bit more category brand specific, whereas this report here is going to give you your specific search query results.
Awesome, cool.
Awesome.
All right, and another important piece in all this is making sure that you have created visible listings for yourself. So a couple of the kind of obvious ones are having good keywords in the title, having strong bullet points, a clear description, and then some of the lesser known ones are back-end search terms, include A+ content, and high resolution images, and a video. There's a video slot, but a couple simple tips before I kind of dive in further here, but use all of the imagery slots you have available to you. Show the product against a plain white background, but then include helpful lifestyle imagery, play to people's hearts. If you can get any picture, in this case with a dog and a cute kid in a bright field or something, like use that to your advantage. Like, people like to have an emotional connection with your brand, and they want to learn about the product. So use the space to do both, or use some of those other lifestyle imagery down in the content. But this listing looks awesome. They've got strong bullets. They've got the extra information here that a customer could just quickly high level look and just see, item weight, item form, that kind of stuff. So another thing too to call out with keywords in the title would be to put your first, any of your most important messages or keywords in the first 50 characters. And the reason being is that on the search results page, a lot of times these titles get cut off, especially if you're shopping on mobile or an iPad or just something with a smaller screen. So you want to make sure that your customer is getting to see the most important words if all they get to do is glance at it as they're passing by. So use that to your advantage with your titles. With the bullet points, again, use this space, but don't overword them. It's better to just have condensed, important information here. And we know that these are indexed by the algorithm, same for the title and the description and search terms. But in this case, you just really want to kind of play to the human aspect of this too, and realize that people don't read in depth super long. So if you want to get your most important bullets in the first 3 and then get your next 2 in the bottom ones, you'll typically have a better chance of converting, or at least keeping a customer there long enough to continue reading and learning about your product. Let's see, so back-end search terms, this is something that you can always be using and checking. And this would be something that would tie into the report that we previously just talked about, where you can see where you're placing relative to other brands with some of those search terms. And so you can include them in the back end of your listing and see if you start getting more traction. One thing I would caution in doing this is the potential for re-indexing your listing. You want to make sure to kind of slow roll this and test things out a little bit. So if you wanted to say, try updating a bunch of keywords for all of your entire catalog, I'd say pick your top 10 ASINs, and then of those, try the bottom, 3 to 5, and experiment with this a little bit, because those are the ones where you'll actually see measurable difference in doing something like this. But try putting in some new keywords, give it a 2-week test and just see, hey, did those start showing up more places? Did we get more traction? What else did it affect before you roll it out to your whole catalog? Because there's a chance if you put a ton of search terms in that aren't relevant, Amazon may say, hey, this listing might apply in a different category, and may look at it that way. So you want to be a little careful there, but there's a huge chance to optimize positively here if you do it right and do it in a measured way. So let's see. Another thing to do to promote your listings is to just make sure that they've got great reviews. People tend to click if you go on the search results page and there's multiple items there that kind of look similar, and there's a couple that are really highly reviewed, people are going to go for the highly reviewed one. So make sure you've got good reviews there. And if your product is newer, you can get those by enrolling in a program like Vine. And you just need to be careful about any kind of review generation. You cannot ask people to give you positive reviews. So that's a big no-no with Amazon. But the longer your product is here, the more reviews it'll get. And so having historical influence too also matters. So another way to get your page boosted too would be to run a coupon. And so that way you get additional visibility, not only on the search engine results page, but on the coupon page. And when you go on your brand store, you'll also be able to see a little coupon running. So it essentially has an extra little flag for customers to say like, hey, what about that product, and click into it. So there's lots of tips to get to make your listing visible and get more people to click into it. So a description is another thing that isn't talked about a lot because it typically will get replaced with A+ content. However, your product description still remains with your listing. It just may not be visible, but it's still being indexed by Amazon as far as we know. So I would say take advantage of that space too, write something up. And in some listings, it appears still in addition to the A+ content, but some it gets replaced with the A+ content. But either way, optimize your listing with both. Take advantage of the full shelf space there and sell your product. Let's see. And then kind of in the same vein here, inspiring your buyers. Some of the considerations you want to be thinking through is, now that you've gotten your customers to see your listing and read it, you want to inspire them to buy and to stay as a customer with you long term. So now's your chance to really show off your products with great imagery. Again, videos, really important, especially as people are moving more and more towards just video content in general. So to have a video on a listing, it needs to be a minute or less. But again, for attention span purposes, I would say probably the sweet spot's about 30 seconds. But if you've got a full minute's worth of great content, add it on there. People will definitely watch it. And an added benefit too of adding a video onto your listing is that it can reduce return rate because people either know what they're getting the first time, or if they had any questions, they got answered, or if they bought your product and there was any reason they were unsure about it, they can refer back to that listing, watch the video, and it typically will answer their questions. So there's so many benefits to having videos other than just inspiring them and getting them excited about your product. So that's a all-around benefit to including those. A+ content is another huge one. This is kind of the chance that you have to shine and show buyers your personality as a brand. A lot of things on Amazon are very cut and dry. They need to be in a certain format. And this is one of the areas that you kind of have some creative freedoms to work within the modules Amazon provides, but you can kind of format that how you want. So this brand did a beautiful job keeping with a certain color palette and kind of highlighting a couple gold specks here and telling you a little bit about themselves, but it did a good job balancing content with imagery. And so that's another thing that people won't often take the time to read a ton of text, but they will be drawn to good imagery, and that will keep them reading text. So always go a little bit more text heavy, or excuse me, imagery heavy with rich images and high resolution images. So, and then connect your listings to your brand store and make sure your brand store represents you well. It adds credibility to your brand, which helps with purchasing too. Customers feel a lot more solid knowing that they're purchasing from a legitimate brand who's up to date, who's got new products coming out, who's got pretty imagery. And then the brand store would be another great place where you can show off more videos. There's not going to be the same one video limit there. And again, great lifestyle imagery, and you can link those back to your other products. So all around, it's just a really, really great opportunity for cross-marketing, educating them, and just getting them on board with your mission. So those are multiple ways you can inspire your buyers. Next would be engagement. And so we've worked through getting your listings visible, getting your buyers inspired, and now you want to keep them engaged. And whether that's a first-time buyer or just a potential shopper or anyone who's returning to your brand, you want to keep them engaged. And so some metrics that you can use to assess engagement is clicks, click-through rate, and page views, which we've touched on before. And you can look through those in multiple different ways. There's the brand store metrics page that you can look at. You can look through your ad, through your campaign metrics, if you're running PPC ads, or you can look on the business report and see just clicks and page views there as well. So multiple places you can be looking for this information. And pretty much, yeah, 3 different ways you can find them. But Jeremy is great at helping boost engagement and diving into some of this stuff. So I'll let Jeremy add any tidbits he has here.
Yeah, thanks, Kenley. I think when we think about how shoppers interact on Amazon, we tend to think of it as sort of a direct line where they search for something, they find the product they're looking for, and they buy it. And quite typically, we're seeing that that's not the case. They're doing a lot of product research within a certain niche that they might be looking for. And so once a shopper gets to your detail page, it's really important to make sure that you are pulling every lever you can to keep them there, or to at least keep them within your brand's catalog. So again, with all the items Kenley mentioned about what you can do to keep them on your listing, using videos and A+ content to give more information about the product. There's some other things you can do from an advertising perspective. We highly recommend using product targeting campaigns and sponsored display ads to cross promote your own ASINs. On any given product detail page, there can be at least 2 sponsored display ad placements and a featured product targeting for sponsored products, and then there are multiple carousels of sponsored product ads. So by targeting your brand's own ASINs, you can, more than likely than not, you can cross promote all of your products without letting competitors come into your own product detail page. So if a shopper does decide to look at a complementary product, or maybe you sell a SKU that's a better fit for what they're looking for, there's a higher likelihood they're going to go to another product detail page in your brand versus one of your competitors. So it's just another way to engage your shoppers, get them more familiar with what products you offer, and prevent them from wandering off to another brand's listing to convert. So something that we highly recommend to try and up that engagement across your portfolio.
All right.
And then the last part we're going to look at here is conversion. So again, making sure that once they do find the right product, that they do the shoppers do convert on your brand. And so when we look at conversion rate, holistically across Amazon, we see that our average conversion rate is roughly 9.7%. This is a something you can kind of use, but again, we want you to keep in mind that every brand is different. There's lots of different factors that go into what makes up an average conversion rate for a brand. The higher the price point, it might take shoppers more time to do product research and make sure that they are getting the right product at a larger purchase price. Products with low prices, for example, they might have higher conversion rates because there's less friction involved with making that transaction. Products that maybe are ingestible, shoppers might take a longer look at because they want to make sure that they are getting a safe and reliable product. So lots of different factors. Again, we would recommend you, pull data, look at your own conversion rates historically, and kind of see where you've been trending and kind of find your own baseline there. Also, we'd recommend tracking your organic and your advertising conversion rate. Oftentimes, these are going to be two very different numbers, and it's good to know how your conversion rates are tracking on both sides of your business, so you know if you are seeing positive or negative trending on either side. And so again, the easiest way to look at the product or these conversion rates. The purchase product report for advertising can show you how you're converting on each ASIN, and then your sales dashboard can show you how you're converting organically as well. And then Kenley here can talk through an example of just one strategy that's worked for increasing the conversion rate for one of the brands we've worked with.
Yeah, all of that those are great call outs, especially the price point part with the conversion rate. If you've got, a $30 product, so many more people will convert on that more easily than say you have a $2,500 product. It really does take a little bit more decision before buying the expensive one. So very important to track your own history there. But for boosting conversions, this is something, again, that has multiple uses. This is a great way to educate your consumers, boost conversions, and reduce return rates. So this example that we pulled is a particularly good one, where in the A+ content, you have multiple options of modules you can choose. And one of them is a comparison chart, and you can put up to 6 products in it and cross-compare and kind of cross-market your products and link them. So say a customer came to buy this hinge and they realized, wait, there's all these other hinges. Shoot, I don't actually know which one is the right one for me. All of a sudden, they could go look at post type, gate gap, gate weight. Like all of a sudden, there's all these different metrics that they may not have even known that they need to consider when buying this. And so you got to think of this kind of from a 10,000-foot view of a customer who knows not nearly as much about your brand, especially if you have a technical brand. Or anything cosmetics. I just think this specifically is really, really helpful in those cases, or with apparel where there's measurements. But using this comparison chart is great. It also, again, brings credibility to your brand and gets them to be on this page, learn about it, and maybe they click on it and go to the other page and convert there. But either way, you got extra traffic to both pages. And I'd guarantee almost certainly in this case that they'd probably go to your brand store too to learn about all the other things you offer that these hinges might be attached to. So I've seen some real success here and highly recommend people taking the time to build out their A+ content in a way that makes sense for their brand. But that's a strong selling point.
Yeah, that's great information, Kenley. And one other thing we added on here that I think sometimes gets overlooked is just simply making sure your variations are set up properly. and in a way that is easy for your customers to shop. So just checking to make sure that if you've got a multi-layer variation, to make sure that it makes sense for a customer who's looking for, a size, color for a product that you offer. It can be off-putting if the variations don't line up. If you have old variations or sizes or colors that are showing that are just grayed out because they're not available anymore. So just doing a quick audit of that can be a huge way to make sure that the consumer's experience once they get to your listing is a positive one.
Yeah, and actually kind of on that same vein, you can apply the same logic to your brand store. There's some brand stores that you can build out kind of the drop-down menu, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to do this for every brand. So again, look at your brand, your audience, what kind of information might they need to make an educated purchase. But with the variations, if you can vary, like in this case, by what material gate each of these hinges could go on, that's another thing that you might not have any idea as a customer without previous history with this brand. But going to their store and seeing, oh, there's different kinds for certain materials of vinyl or plastic or metal. Okay, and then you can click into those and figure out, hey, I have other gates. And then that's how you earn a lifelong customer that way, and get somebody educated and reduce your own returns. There's just all around, there's so many benefits there. And typically once you've got a customer that's interested and locked into one kind of brand and sees how good this brand is, they'll continue to purchase from you in the future. So I think that there's both short and long-term benefits here, and just really makes for a positive experience for the customer, which is the ultimate goal, in addition to obviously building revenue and hitting goals for the brand.
Great. And then the last thing we just want to talk about here in this section is just to sort of reframe the way we might think about how we would grow sales with all the information that's just been presented. So, a lot of the times we think about we need to grow sales on Amazon. We need to look at acquiring new customers, getting in front of more shoppers, and that's really the only way that we can grow. When in fact, if we turn all this information around and look at it as a bottoms-up approach, there's a lot of opportunity to shore up what you have already been doing with your strategy. And these are typically much more cost-effective and more profitable ways to make short-term improvements. So again, if we think about starting with the shopper's journey towards the end of the shopping experience, again, increasing that conversion rate by making sure our content is fully optimized. Again, some of the things we talked about targeting our own brand ASINs through advertising, whether that's through sponsored products or product targeting ads, or through sponsored display, retargeting shoppers who have already visited our listings, engaging with customers who have either reviewed our product in the past, or again, using the tools available to ask for reviews in a compliant manner. Again, the more reviews garners more trust for the shoppers once they get to your listings. Any way you can engage with your shopper, again, with videos, brand store, etc. These are all relatively free, very cost-effective means of increasing your conversion rate. And that's going to be the quickest way that you can see an impact on your bottom line.
Agreed. All right, so tying it all together, how do we use those metrics to set some goals? This is very important for all brands and should be an ongoing process, but there is some simple math here. And then again, depending on which goals and what you're looking at, you can kind of make adjustments and realize which goals impact each other. But a couple ways to look at this is this first one, which is to set sales targets based on traffic. And that is pretty much as simple as, when your universal goal is to grow top line sales, using these metrics can make it become a more predictable and mathematical process. So in this case, if you knew that your pages receive 30,000 views on a monthly basis and generate 200K in revenue, and your goal is to get to 300K in revenue. A way to work towards that goal would be working towards 4,500 page views. So you could be checking that, and that won't necessarily equal the same, but that will get you closer, and could equal that. So it can be impacted by several other things, but that's why it's also important to take into account marketing, which Jeremy can speak to here.
Yeah, and then another way we can look at some goal setting of, through the lens of advertising is, if we have a set ad budget and we know that what our return is on our ad dollars. So if we spend 10,000 a month, we get 50,000 in ad revenue. Our return on ad spend would then be a 5. So if our goal is to then get $100,000 in ad revenue, what should an ideal budget be to reach that goal? I think off the top, a lot of us would immediately think, oh, we just need to spend $20,000 a month then to get to that $100,000 mark. But one thing to keep in mind is that there's always going to be a depreciation in our ROAS as we continue to increase our ad spend and go for new customer acquisition. Very rarely will an extra dollar in ad spend produce the same return as what you're trending at. The one situation this might be the same is if your campaigns are consistently at a budget, you could very likely see a flat ROAS as you continue to increase that ad spend. But typically what's going to happen is as you increase your budget, your ROAS will start to drop. So maybe it's going to take $30,000 to get $100,000 in ad revenue. So again, it's not a straight line. It's a little bit more of an art mixed with a science here, but this will at least directionally give you an idea of what it's going to take to grow your channel through the lens of advertising.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. Another thing that we also look at with many brands is their goals too, and a lot of them have goals based around year over year or month over month growth, either by channel revenue or potentially just units sold. Sometimes it's contribution margin that they're looking at, or they're more specifically focusing on something like the sales from the brand store. So that's where we would work with them to increase traffic from both on and off Amazon to the brand store, and set metrics there. And other metrics too. It doesn't necessarily have to be just top line revenue growth. You could be growing revenue from the top and from the middle by looking at profitability by ASIN, reducing returns, finding, just making sure that your fees are being calculated correctly, and things aren't being overweighed or oversized and you're paying more for them in storage than you should be. So there's tons of little ways to be checking that stuff to make sure that you're not losing money in the middle and you're still growing money in the top. And so there's multiple things to be tracking. It's just a matter of kind of which one is your goal. And then we can work either backwards or forwards using math and metrics with you towards that. So there's lots of ways to do it, and hopefully talking through some of these today gave you some ideas and conversation starters. But the next thing to look through would pretty much be, is it working? Is what you're doing getting you where you need to go? And so this is where it's not always going to be an even A/B test, just given the Amazon landscape changes, stock changes, etc. But in general, I'd say make a small change, wait 2 weeks, analyze those metrics, and then kind of see from there. And specifically, the way that I'm thinking of this is with SEO full content updates. You typically want to batch those out and do it like I talked about earlier, by picking a couple top ASINs, making changes, and then seeing in 2 weeks, like how are they placing on the search engine now? What's our conversion rate? Did we see any change in sales for any reason there? And then, from there, you'd want to start going through and changing product descriptions or bullets, but typically you don't want to do those all at once if you can avoid it, and do your entire catalog all at once, just to avoid any potential re-indexing. But just start it out, and if it's going smoothly, then you can continue doing it in bigger chunks. So that would also probably apply in the marketing case, wouldn't you say, Jeremy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, trying new things. Don't be, not being afraid to test and retest. The landscape is always changing, and if you're standing still and rolling out the same strategy year over year, it's not likely you'll continue to see the same results. One thing I always keep in mind as I'm working on strategy with my partners is, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so before you start any of these tactics, make sure you understand what your goal is, what you're trying to improve, pull the right reports, get the right data in front of you beforehand so you know what your baseline is. Check and recheck again how things are performing. And if you need to make a change, make a change. But make sure that you are using the data presented to help you see what is actually going on with your channel. Again, hopefully we've presented some options and as Kenley said, created some conversation starters around different metrics and different ways about looking at your business that maybe you're haven't thought about a lot outside of sales and units sold, et cetera. So, a lot of good stuff in here, and hopefully we have sort of encouraged you to get a little bit deeper inside some of the data within your Amazon channel.
All right, this is Heather again, and we are going to open up to the live Q&A. We do have several questions that were asked during the presentation, so we'll start there. To your knowledge, are there any automated ways to download monthly advertising metrics on the paid advertising campaign manager? The data is only available for up to 3 months, so this could be very useful if someone wants to keep track of these metrics and save them to review later. So do you know if there's any way to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are ways to get the data via some third-party tools that would be a little bit outside of the scope of this call. Typically we do encourage at the beginning of the month to pull data so you can have it saved month over month historically. That the Amazon ad platform does have some of its limitations, and automation is typically one of the bigger ones, unfortunately. But we do see improvements, frequently. So my hope is that there will be a more automated way to get that. But yeah, right now my best tip would be just going on, whether it's the first of the month or the third of the, whatever that day is, the same day, just make that a recurring task to pull the reports so you can save that data historically.
Perfect. And then specifically regarding visibility and optimizing listings, does SEO optimization help with positioning, and does it help with being less reliant on the paid search?
It can. Yes, it helps with listing visibility, and it can help with being less reliant on paid search. It's kind of an Amazon world these days, so they want you to have paid search and to stay competitive across just multiple types of shoppers. You're going to want to also have paid search, but yes, optimizing your back-end search terms specifically, especially at a regular basis, like maybe a quarterly cadence, is something that we typically do to make sure that we're doing market research, seeing if there is any other high converting terms for that product or that category that have kind of changed or shifted that should be included, because sometimes including those can help. But like Jeremy said, at a certain point, there can be diminishing returns and ROAS when you've been using the same budget to drive the same growth, year over year. So there's a little bit of nuance there, and like he said, a bit of an art and a science to that one. Jeremy, do you have anything else to add on that one?
The one thing I would just add there is that they very much work in tandem, both the organic listing improvements and your paid search performance. And typically what we strive for with our brands is as your sales velocity grows, your organic sales will hopefully outpace your paid advertising sales. And so while 50% of your sales might come from advertising 1 month, in 3 months, maybe it's down to 45, maybe it's down to 40 at some point later on. That's kind of the trajectory we try to get our brands towards, because the organic sales are more profitable than the advertising sales. So the real red flag would be, is your percentage of revenue, is it continuously being more and more reliant on your paid ads? And that would indicate that there's likely something that needs to be done on your listings to try and get that organic revenue back up.
Excellent, and that leads perfectly into our next question, which is, are there reports that you can use to assess whether or not your ads are cannibalizing your organic search results?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's one that we get a lot. There's not specifically, again, one that's going to show you, necessarily we would have got this conversion, but for the ad that we ran that got it instead. There's, again, testing is always a big thing, depending on, I would say depending on how high leverage your ads are for you, you could always try, pulling your advertising back or pausing it on an ASIN or two, a small batch of your portfolio, or even some keywords, and seeing if you are maintaining your rank or your revenue once that experiment does happen. Again, I would do that for probably a short period of time. And if you do see sales drop on any specific search term, or if you see your rank, drop, or your impressions start to drop using that impression share report or the search query report, I would turn it back on. There is always a risk that you are cannibalizing your ads, or you're cannibalizing organic sales with advertising. But there is, there's lots of studies that have been done on this topic, in that there is a significant consumer confidence effect when they see both an advertised product and that same product from an organic listing perspective. And so it just reinforces to the shopper that this is a quality product, because it is being shown in high position. So, typically what we would see is that the benefit to running the ads definitely outweighs the risk of losing that advertising position to a competitor.
Excellent, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. We do have just a few minutes, so I want to try to, if we don't have time to answer all of these questions, we do have several posts in our resources tab that cover a lot of the questions, such as how to ask for reviews, how to optimize listings, create better customer engagement, things like that. We did mention some ways to, some kind of third-party systems that you can use to pull together this data and make it a little bit more digestible. But we do have a specific question that if Amazon is suppressing listings due to competitive pricing and you're the only seller of these products, is there a way around this, and is there a way to use some of the metrics that you're seeing to fix that issue?
Oh, that's an excellent question, and one we've just recently started seeing. I honestly do not have the answer to that question yet. I will have to do a little bit more research and follow up. Yeah, Jeremy, do you have any?
Yeah,
any input there?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's become more problematic. It typically points to an off Amazon pricing situation. There's not a whole lot of, really the only thing you can sort of keep an eye out is that buy box percentage, or again, you're making sure you're keeping an eye on your sessions and page views. Obviously having that rolled buy box, or having a listing being suppressed altogether, that's going to be, you'll probably catch it before you have a chance to dive into those reports. But that's usually where we would see an indication for that's the issue, is an off Amazon pricing situation.
Yeah, and one thing that I've seen as particularly as just with inflation and fuel costs have kind of gone up, there's been a weird incidence of this happening for the first time, where we've seen the prices on the recommended prices from Amazon be higher than what the brand wants to sell it for, despite having no competitors and oftentimes not even having competition offline. So I would say exactly what Jeremy said, to check first. Google, like go on Google Shopping and look up your product and just see right there, are there any other offers for it anywhere else online that are lower? And if that's usually the problem, so address that one first. If that's not the problem, check your margins, because Amazon may be trying to help you there and make sure that you're not losing money and pull back from their platform. So there's another possible option. Or they may be trying to keep you competitive with a similar products across the marketplace. So this is a fairly new problem that we're seeing, where it's not also a buy box issue every single time where another person is underpricing you. So that's where a little bit more research is needed on our side to see if there are any newer workarounds that can help address this problem that I'm continuing to see more and more.
Great. Thank you so much. And we are at time, so we are going to close this down at this time. As I mentioned, we do have a resources tab on our main Caspian website where you can find a lot of these topics that we've discussed, kind of elaborated on in more detail. We will be sending a recording of this webinar out. So if you want to go back, if there were any parts that you didn't have time to take notes on, you will receive a recording of this email of this webinar. And then also regarding some of the questions, we received several questions regarding testing. Just to reiterate, what Jeremy said at the end is, don't be afraid to try new things, but definitely do wait a couple of weeks to see if you have the, if you can see the data in the reports, and that's the best way to kind of make those, do those tests and those changes. But that could be something that we maybe address in a future webinar, is just some of the testing options there. So once again, everyone, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for sticking through to the end. And if you have more questions, again, we will be sending this webinar recording out, so you'll be able to go through this recording again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. And thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kenley. Appreciate it. And everyone, have a great day.
You as well. Bye.